Welcome everyone to this course on self-knowledge. In today's lecture, we're going to explore one of the 48 laws that govern the physical world, the law of the pendulum. For those of us walking the path of self-knowledge, understanding this law is essential. It helps us see how we can truly reach the truth about anything, and more importantly, how we can discover the deeper truth within ourselves. In this session, we will learn how this law operates, how it influences both the external world and our inner world, and most importantly, how we can transcend it in order to reach the truth. A pendulum is a weight suspended from a fixed point, allowing it to swing freely. Traditionally, it was often a rod with a weight at its end, used to regulate the mechanism of ancient clocks that relied on the pendulum's oscillating motion to function. This movement carries a profound meaning. It invites us to reflect on how absolutely everything that unfolds over time in this world, in our personal lives, and even within our own psychology, follows this same rhythm, this same law, the law of the pendulum. In life, everything ebbs and flows. Things rise and fall, increase and decrease, come and go, all according to this marvelous law. The law of the pendulum teaches us that everything is subject to the fluctuations of time. Everything evolves and then devolves, moving from one extreme to another. And here lies a vital teaching. The truth is not found in any of these extremes. For example, in lecture number 8 of this course, we studied the laws of evolution and involution, laws to which everything in this world is subject. The law of the pendulum shows us that this process of rising and falling, growing and diminishing, is constant and unceasing. Nothing escapes it. In ancient times, however, the dogma of evolution did not exist. This modern dogma has led many to believe that humanity has been advancing through a continuous evolutionary process, and that by the mere passing of time, this process will naturally lead us to become superhuman. But this idea completely ignores the law of involution. The wise ones of antiquity understood the law of the pendulum perfectly. They knew that everything which evolves and reaches its highest point will inevitably begin a process of decline, an involution that cannot be avoided. History itself makes this evident. We can observe this in the great civilizations that have risen and fallen on Earth. Take ancient Egypt, for example. It emerged with tremendous power and grew into a civilization of extraordinary development. But once it reached its peak, the inevitable process of decline began. Egypt passed to the opposite side of the pendulum, and today nothing remains of that majestic civilization but ruins. Later, when Egypt fell, Jerusalem rose on the other side, the beloved city of the prophets. And yet, when Israel fell as a great power, the pendulum shifted once again, and the Roman Empire arose at the opposite extreme. The law of the pendulum has governed the destiny of all the great powers of history. And if we look closely, we will see that absolutely everything, without exception, is subject to this same law. We can also observe how this law applies to plants, animals, and human beings alike. Take the life of a human being, for example. We grow, develop, and eventually reach that stage of life where we enjoy strength, youth, beauty, and power. At that point, it often feels as though this state will last forever. But inevitably, once that peak is reached, the process of decline begins. The years of old age arrive, bringing with them illness, weakness, and eventually, death. This law is also evident in the rise and fall of a company or business. When a business reaches its highest point, when it's at its most profitable and successful, it may seem as though its growth will never end. And yet, at that very moment, the pendulum begins to swing in the opposite direction. The movement of this law is relentless and unavoidable. However, when we begin to understand the deeper purpose of this law, especially how it operates within our inner world, we gain the ability to use it as a tool for acquiring wisdom. If we carefully observe our own psychology, we'll see that the same law is constantly at work within us. All of our emotions, thoughts, and desires oscillate according to the law of the pendulum. In truth, all of humanity is bipolar. We constantly move from liking to disliking, from pleasure to pain, from happiness to sadness. We rarely maintain a state of permanent balance. This happens because our psychological defects themselves are bipolar. Each one has two poles, an active pole and a passive pole. Take laziness, for instance. On one side, there's the active laziness. the lack of desire to do anything, the constant urge to rest, sleep, or remain inactive. On the other side, there's in passive form, the tendency to stay overly busy with meaningless activities, filling our time with trivial personality-driven tasks, leaving no energy or motivation for the things that could actually awaken our consciousness. The same happens with greed. On one pole, we find the hoarding, stingy self. On the opposite pole, we find the wasteful self, the one that squanders resources without care. At one pole, we find sadness, at the other, joy. At one pole, we encounter hatred, at the other, infatuation. But here lies a very common mistake. We often confuse the passive pole of a defect with a virtue. In reality, virtue is not found in either extreme. Consciousness, wisdom, and reality exist only in the center, in the point of balance, beyond the swing of the pendulum. Yet, we constantly make the mistake of clinging to one side of the pendulum, thinking we can make that state permanent. We cling to pleasure, for example, believing it will last forever. But what we fail to see is that the more we attach ourselves to pleasure, the greater the force with which the pendulum will swing back, and inevitably we will have to experience pain. The same applies to attachments of any kind. The more we become attached to a person or a thing, the more intense our suffering will be when we lose it. The pendulum will always swing, and the further we go toward one extreme, the more energy we give to the pendulum, and the stronger it will pull us to the opposite extreme. The more excitement we create around an expectation, the greater the disappointment when it isn't fulfilled. The more attached we become to acquiring something, the more frustration we feel when we lose it. We can also observe how the pendulum manifests within relationships. At the beginning of a relationship, desire, thought, and emotion all enter a phase of ascent. There is falling in love, idealization, romance, and passion. Everything feels heightened and intense. However, the stronger this intensity is at the beginning, the stronger the reaction will be when conflicts, misunderstandings, or disappointments arise. With the same force that passion was once experienced, discussions grow heated, affection fades, and even hatred can appear. Most couples, if they stay together, end up trapped in this constant pendulum swing, moving from stages of romance and passion to stages of arguments and resentment. Eventually, a serious conflict arises, or boredom sets in, or betrayal occurs, and then the relationship ends. But what usually happens? We move on to another partner, only to repeat the same pendulum cycle again, just with a different person. This is why so many people never find lasting happiness or stable peace. And here lies the deeper truth. This doesn't only happen in relationships. It happens in every aspect of our lives. We spend our entire existence striving for stability, happiness, and a state of permanent peace. But because we keep seeking them by clinging to one extreme of the pendulum, we never reach the truth. So, how can we break free from this pattern? Through observation and reflection. By learning to see both extremes clearly. Take a relationship, for example. We must observe what triggers our feelings of attraction and affection, as well as what triggers our rejection and resentment toward our partner. Then, we must work on those aspects through the practice of psychological death. When we feel ourselves being carried away by infatuation and passion, we need to eliminate the psychological elements within us that lead to emotional, mental, and sexual overflow. Likewise, when we are driven by discontent, coldness, or rejection toward our partner, we must also work on those aspects through psychological death. As we do this, something remarkable happens. The pendulum begins to lose strength. Its swing slows down. We pass more gently through the center, the point of balance, and in that state, we begin to see the truth more clearly. This center, this point of equilibrium, is where understanding arises. To deepen this process, we can use the technique of reflective meditation that we studied in Lesson 22. By meditating on the scenes of our lives in which we experienced both poles of a given psychological defect, we can eliminate the inner states that trapped us at both extremes. Through this, we move toward the center of the pendulum, and only from the center can we truly comprehend. Because the truth is found neither in pleasure nor in pain, neither in joy nor in suffering, neither in attraction nor in aversion. The truth is found in balance, in the present moment, in what is permanent. It is in the absence of both pain and pleasure that we discover true happiness. It is in the absence of hatred and infatuation that we uncover true love. And true love is eternal. True love is permanent. We will only know peace and real happiness if we free ourselves from the psychological defects that keep us trapped, swinging endlessly from one extreme to the other. However, the egoic mind naturally resists balance. To the ego, balance feels dull and uninteresting. The ego prefers to seek constant stimulation, mental, emotional, or sexual, because that excitement makes it feel alive. But as long as we follow the ego, we will remain bound to the law of the pendulum. And when the pendulum inevitably swings to the opposite pole, we will experience emptiness, pain, and sadness, and we will feel them with the same intensity as we once felt pleasure. This is the true purpose of this law, to make us experience both sides of the coin, so that when we finally reflect on them, we realize the ultimate truth. Neither extreme holds the answer. The truth lies beyond the swing of the pendulum. We can also observe the law of the pendulum in the realm of our beliefs. Whenever we believe in something, or when we reject something, we are simply placing ourselves at one end of the pendulum. In both cases, we are clinging to a concept, to an idea, and therefore we remain trapped in the swing of this law. For example, we could place the various pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist schools, along with many religions and sects, on the far right side of the pendulum, and on the far left side, we could place the materialist, Marxist, atheist, and skeptical schools of thought. It is very common to see how people move between these extremes. Take, for instance, a religious fanatic. If something unexpected or deeply disappointing happens, for example, praying fervently to God to save a sick child only for the child to die, or being publicly defeated in a debate by an atheist, this person may suddenly swing to the opposite extreme of the pendulum. They may abandon their faith entirely and become an atheist, a materialist, or a skeptic. And the reverse also happens. A materialistic atheist, when confronted with a profound transcendental event or in a moment of intense terror, may suddenly swing to the other extreme, becoming a fervent religious believer or even a radical fanatic. This shows us something essential. The truth is not found in any concept, nor in any belief, nor in any extreme. But here lies the difficulty. Because we believe we are wise, we cling fanatically to our position, our theories, and our beliefs, often without any real verification. However, sooner or later, life places us in situations where the pendulum swings, and we may suddenly find ourselves changing positions, abandoning old beliefs, and adopting new ones. This endless movement between concepts and ideologies keeps us far from reality. Neither spiritualist schools nor their materialist opponents can ever lead us to the truth. Why? Because both are built upon beliefs and theories, not upon direct experience and verification. Spirit and matter are two highly debated and complex concepts that no one truly understands. If someone asks us, what is matter, we might respond with a definition. It's everything that occupies space. And if someone asks, what is spirit, we might offer several concepts. We could say it's consciousness, universal energy, or even God. But all of these are just concepts. In reality, the mind knows nothing about spirit, and it also knows nothing about matter. Only when we let go of all concepts, the ones we hold about one extreme and the other, the ones related to spirituality, atheism, materialism, or any other ideology, only then can we give space to direct verification. And it's only through direct experience that we come to truly know the truth. For example, someone might speak to us about astral projection, or we could even watch Lecture 3 of this course and study the practice of astral projection. But unless we actually practice it, all we have is a concept, something we may choose to believe or not believe. We might even collect thousands of other concepts, arguments, and theories to support our position that astral projection is real, or that it isn't. Yet, until we practice it for ourselves, until we experience it directly, we'll simply remain trapped, swinging endlessly between the concepts of one extreme and the other. A concept is nothing more than that, a concept. Reality is not a concept, even though countless concepts can be created about reality. The problem is that we tend to label everything and create thousands of concepts about things. And by doing so, we stop truly experiencing reality. Instead, We perceive everything through the lens of our concepts, through what we think reality is, not what it actually is. And here's the trap. We believe that the more concepts we accumulate, the wiser we become. But wisdom doesn't come from collecting concepts. Because if we never verify anything directly, if we never observe reality as it is, we fail to notice that these very concepts are what distance us from true knowledge. The more concepts we have, the less we actually know, because we haven't personally confirmed any of them. We merely believe them. And the more we fill our minds with concepts, the more we will eventually have to unlearn in order to truly know. We must deeply understand this. The truth is not found in beliefs. What we think about something is not the truth. What we believe about something is not the truth. The truth is what we verify directly. As long as we continue to cling to concepts and beliefs, we will never reach the truth. The truth isn't in the extreme right or the extreme left. It isn't in defending one concept or attacking another. When we defend a position according to the mind, we make ourselves slaves to that concept. We attack those who don't think like us or don't believe as we do. If we believe that God is in one particular place, or that truth belongs to one religion, or if we are convinced that one theory is correct, without having verified it, we fool ourselves into thinking we have the truth. And on the other hand, if we reject these things and declare them false, again without verification, we fall into the same trap. In both cases, we become arrogant, believing we are superior to others, convinced that our way of thinking is the right one. And so, we defend or reject thousands of concepts. We argue endlessly, believing we are defending truth. But in reality, we are only defending a concept. Every psychological discipline is opposed by another discipline. Every logical, structured theory is opposed by another equally structured theory. And in the end, what does that leave us with? We may feel intelligent, wise, or superior, but in truth, we are simply slaves to concepts that are not the truth. Because the truth lies outside of all concepts. The person who clings to one pole of the pendulum criticizes, rejects, and attacks those who stand on the opposite pole, always believing they are right. But the person who has discovered the center does not criticize. The one who has verified the truth does not argue. Because when you become one with the truth, you no longer believe you have it, you are it. Therefore, whenever we find ourselves arguing, judging, or criticizing, it is a clear sign we do not have the truth. We are simply polarized. What is the truth? This is, without a doubt, one of the most fascinating questions we can ever ask ourselves. When someone once asked Jesus, "What is truth?" the master remained profoundly silent, and when the Buddha was asked the same question, he simply turned his back and walked away. Through these actions, both masters gave us a profound teaching. The truth cannot be conceptualized. Anything we can say about the truth is not the truth itself. The truth can only be found in inner silence, in the complete absence of the psychological I. The truth is the unknown, revealed from moment to moment. It does not belong to the endless coming and going of theories, beliefs, or dogmas. Any concept the mind forms about the truth is never the truth. Any opinion we hold about the truth, no matter how respectable or sophisticated it may seem, is still not the truth. To approach it, we must empty ourselves of unverified concepts and seek it through direct experience, through personal verification, through our own inner experimentation. Because the truth is not something to be believed, it is not something to be assumed or theorized. Truth is something that must be experienced directly, like when you put your finger in the fire and get burned, or like when you swallow water and drown. Only through living, personal experience can we truly know it. So where do we find the truth? The truth is found at the center of the pendulum, not on the extreme right, nor on the extreme left. To approach it, we must first learn to observe and recognize where, how, and why we are polarized, whether in our concepts, our beliefs, or any of our psychological tendencies. Only when we are able to observe the movements of our inner pendulum can we begin to dissolve, through psychological death, those aspects of ourselves that keep us trapped at one extreme or the other. The center of the pendulum lies within us, in inner silence, when we are fully present, completely living the moment, practicing self-observation and psychological death. It is precisely there that we must discover and directly experience what is real, the truth. We will only find the truth in inner silence. When we dissolve the psychological I, when we eliminate the many ways of being that manifest through desire, mind, and emotion, then we can truly know. Because only pure consciousness can experience itself, and only through psychological death can the essence, the real within us, be liberated. The truth has nothing to do with what has been said or not said, written or unwritten. It only reveals itself when the ego has completely died. We must understand something essential. The mind cannot seek the truth, because it doesn't know it. Our mind is deeply conditioned, invaded by psychological defects. The truth comes to us spontaneously when we have eliminated all the undesirable elements that make up the myself, the ego. As long as consciousness remains trapped within the I, it cannot experience what is truly real, that which exists beyond the body, beyond emotions, beyond the mind itself. And that is the truth. We must learn to find that critical point where the truth resides, where consciousness awakens. The pendulum of life is always swinging. At one extreme, we convince ourselves that we have found the truth. Yet, inevitably, the pendulum begins its journey back toward the opposite side. And at the other extreme, we once again believe we possess the truth, only for the pendulum to swing back again. This endless motion teaches us something profound. The truth cannot be found at either extreme. That is the great teaching contained within this law. Now let us observe our inner pendulum. It constantly swings, from the mind to desire, from thoughts to impulses. And so, if we want to reach true understanding in any situation, we must avoid becoming polarized. We must neither fall into overthinking nor be carried away by desire. Instead, we must keep our inner pendulum balanced. This balance is achieved by staying fully present, anchored in the heart in a state of inner silence. Whenever a situation arises that triggers a psychological reaction, when we feel the urge to form an opinion, to judge, to criticize, or to doubt, we must observe ourselves. We need to notice the movement of our inner pendulum and bring it back to balance. Only in that state of balance, in that silence, in that wakeful self-remembering, can our consciousness manifest, and only then can we perceive the truth. When desires arise, we observe them, dissolve them, and return to the heart. When thoughts and justifications appear, we eliminate them and return again to the heart. For it is within the heart that we receive the wisdom of the Father, which comes to us as intuition. This is how we keep our inner pendulum balanced, and by doing so, we arrive at understanding the living experience of truth in any situation. Understanding is a faculty of the heart. It is what allows us to reconcile opposites and see reality as it is. I'll leave you with this phrase to reflect on. Of what use it is to a man to know 1,000 theories if he has never experienced the truth. That concludes today's topic. I hope you found it meaningful and that it serves you in your own inner work. And remember, you can leave all your questions in the comments section below. I warmly invite you to our next conference where we'll explore the method to awaken consciousness. We'll also discuss the two forms of consciousness we possess, the objective and the subjective, a truly fascinating subject you won't want to miss. Thank you for joining us for today's lecture. Until next time, keep working on yourself.